Hello, this is John with PodWurx, and today we are going to be installing the new PodWurx 991.2 Chrono gauge pod. It is going to be replacing our center Chrono display here, and to do that in this particular vehicle, we already have previously installed this Snow Performance Stage 2 controller, and what we want to do is be able to get this controller out of the glove box and up in the dashboard where we can monitor it. And the PodWurx Chronopod is going to do that just for us. We're going to start by pulling this center tire bezel out, which is going to be this entire piece here. And we want to be very careful because this entire dash is actually leather wrapped. Of course, this is leather, so it's not going to stick real well, but we just want to add some protection. We're going to want to go to fold out towards the sides, and when we pop it out and we have to unplug some of the electrical connectors, you'll see why we want to go so far out. And I like to start on this corner just because it's comfortable. And we're going to use two tools here. One is going to be a more rigid metal trim tool, and the other one's going to be a bit softer plastic non-marring trim tool. And what we're going to want to do is we're going to jump into one of these vents and we're going to pull this up, and you can see how around this edge we're getting a little bit of lift, and that's because we don't want to jam this metal tool in down between. We want to lift it up a little bit, and then we can get underneath the edge like that. And then we can come in with our plastic non-marring tool and we can just start working this up little by little. And you can see we're already starting to get some pry. And then just work our way around. And once we kind of get started here, we can just use our hands to pop it. Maybe a little bit of help from our friend. And you do have to be careful because some of these tabs, they do like to break, so be very careful. All right, these here, these are the tabs that like to break, so if you're not gentle and you don't get a good finger underneath these, you will pop these off. All right, so now from here, we've got two plugs, one back here for the sensor, and then one here for the Chrono. Now, the important thing that you want to watch out for here is that you've got a speaker right here, and this plug is right over the speaker. So if you're not real careful in plugging this, you can put a hole in your speaker. So just be very careful with that. I'm going to take my microfiber. I'm just going to kind of put it under there just to give a little bit of extra protection. And then you can see now why I have this tape around the edge is because these clips, they're going to be riding against the dash. There's just no way around it. So we're going to unplug this sensor here that has a plug here, and then there's a Chrono plug that's right here. So we're going to start with this one. You're going to kind of just hold this up as high as you can. Make sure that you're resting this on the tape on the back side, and then you have a small push tab right here. It's almost too small for you to get with your fingernail, so we're going to use a small screwdriver. I'm going to push in on that tab, the screwdriver, and then at the same time pull down. Can be a little tricky. Yep. All right, we got that tab, we got it unclipped. We're just going to pull it out like that. And then that's going to allow us to rotate this around. We're going to unclip this out of the Chrono. Just use our screwdriver. We're going to push in on this tab and then pull it out. And that frees our stock bezel. This is really just about installing the Chronopod. But just for a reference, we've gone ahead and pulled the dashboard glove box out, and what we've done is we've ran our wires up through here. And what the easiest way to do this is once you pull the glove box out, you have plenty of room, And obviously this depends on what kind of gauge you're planning on putting in, and that'll depend on whether you're going through and catching boost, or if you're doing some sort of cooler. That'll come from different places in the car, but this gives you the maximum access up under through to this. And I just use a fish like this, and you just run right down through like that, and then you can thread your wires right up. And as you can see, of course, we've already had a gauge installed, and we're just moving it from the glove box up here to the new Chronopod. So we've ran our wires up through here, and now we have them in a nice pigtail. And so when we get ready to put this in, we just plug it in, and we are ready to go. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we have both our new Chronopod and our original here side by side, and we're going to transfer over all of the existing parts that we're going to need, which is going to include the sensor, the Chrono itself, this hood, and then of course on the bottom all the fastening hardware that's going to make it snap back into our dash. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started by taking the hardware off of this one. So we're going to flip this upside down. We're going to go ahead and start by taking our Chrono out. And then we take our two Torx out, and those are a T20. Then we're going to slide our Chrono out. We'll set that aside. And then we're going to get these two little speed clips out, and helps to have a little pick. These will slide off with a little bit of effort. And then we're going to go ahead and take these snap clips off. This guy will just pull off like that. Then if you have a set of trim tools like this, these get underneath. Those will slip right off. Okay, and then we have a rubber gasket, and we're going to pull that rubber gasket off. And this rubber gasket will form perfectly to the new Chronopod. Then we have our speaker surround. That's just double stick taped, and if you're very careful, you can pull that out without tearing it. It'll be reusable. And then that leaves our sensor back here. And that sensor, you just push in on the clip, and comes right out. So we're just going to go ahead and set this guy aside, and we're going to bring our Chronopod over, and we're going to just reverse that exact operation. We'll go ahead and slide in our sensor. Snaps in, just the same reverse order. Slide that all the way around. It's important to make sure that this gasket goes back on, because it is what Porsche has put in place to make sure there's no rattles or squeaks in the dash, which they do a very good job of. Perfect factory fit, nice. Once that's on, let's go ahead and pop that center on there. And then we've got the speed clips, and all this stuff can go on in no particular order, as long as it goes back into its location. And these just press on. Make sure they go all the way to the bottom. They're much more difficult to pull off than they are to put on. And now we're set. We've got all our hardware back on there. Only thing left is our gasket for our speaker. We're going to try and get that lined up just about the way it came from the factory. We're going to reuse our original hood. So let's go ahead and take that off real quick. This is two Torx T10. Then this will just slide straight forward like that. And then we'll just transfer that directly over. And this will slide right onto our new Chronopod like that. Reuse the existing Torx. Just snug. All right, and now we'll go ahead and slide our Chrono back in. And then go ahead and reinstall our hardware. Now we're ready to install our gauge. First we need to remove it from the old pod. We're just going to slide that right through. And then of course there's already a mounting ring on this, so we'll go ahead and reuse that. Otherwise we would use a new one. And we're going to slide these on through. It's going to go through the front side. And that's just going to pressure fit right in. We're going to get it turned straight. All right, now we got that clocked perfectly, and we're going to go ahead and put our matching hood on. This will slide just in place, just like the factory hood did next to it. Then underneath, we have 2 screw holes. And in the supplied hardware pack, we'll go ahead and insert those. And then we're all set. We'll go ahead and reinstall this into the car, and now when we're plugging in our Chrono and our sensor, we'll also plug in the wiring for our controller. And then that gives us our installed controller into our new Chronopod. We got a couple of these little flimsy vent pieces here, and we're just going to take a little bit out of these little kind of fiber pieces, and all we're doing here is giving ourselves a little bit of extra room for the bottom of the pod and the wiring. Kind of a fibrous stuff comes out pretty darn easy. And so now what we're going to do is go ahead and plug in our Snow controller in this particular application, so we have a large bundle of wires, which can be a little bit challenging. And of course we're using a configuration that is using all of the Snow controller's features, including its second stage. So we're using every single wire, and that makes a lot of wires that we have to pack in here. Of course this is going to vary from install to install based on what it is that you're putting in the car for a gauge. Now of course if you needed to, or if you had a gauge that required it, you can always trim out a little bit more in here, or even drill a hole depending on where you want to route your wiring. But I think we're going to get lucky and have enough room to lay our wiring right there on top. There we go. And there we are. We're all nice in and very nice. Installed. Looks just like stock, fits like stock, and we've now got our 52mm Snow Performance controller installed and ready to use.